There are moments in life when our silence becomes self-betrayal, when we allow actions to unfold in front of us, not out of compassion, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." Yet the inverse is also true. What you passively tolerate grows roots in your psyche and begins to rot your inner integrity. This is not merely about setting boundaries with others. It is about the soul's responsibility to defend itself from slow erosion. In this reflection, we explore 11 deeds you must never tolerate, not because you are cold or unforgiving, but because to accept them is to abandon yourself. First deed, consistent disrespect, disguised as jokes. Humor is a double-edged sword. It can bond souls or slice them open with subtle cruelty. When someone repeatedly makes you the target of their jokes, especially in public, especially under the guise of just kidding, they are revealing something deeper. Jung believed that jokes often conceal truth too dangerous for direct expression. When someone ridicules your values, your pain, your past, and expects you to laugh along, they are testing the limits of what you will endure. They are inviting you to betray your own dignity with a smile. The soul shrinks in those moments, and the more you tolerate it, the more it teaches others, and yourself, that your boundaries are flexible, negotiable, forgettable. Second deed, emotional manipulation through guilt. Guilt is a powerful psychological weapon, and some people wield it like an artist. They twist your empathy against you. They make their problems your responsibility, their pain your fault. If you loved me, you would. This phrase alone should ring alarms in your unconscious. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the hidden part of ourselves that manipulates, deceives, and controls. When someone consistently uses guilt to steer your behavior, they are not loving you. They are using you as a pawn in their unconscious drama. Tolerating this erodes your sense of autonomy. You begin to doubt your own needs, your own voice, your own right to say no. Guilt that does not lead to growth is simply bondage. Third deed, repeated dishonesty. Trust is the sacred currency of the psyche. Without it, even the strongest bond corrodes into suspicion and silence. When someone lies to you, not once in a moment of panic, but repeatedly, systematically, they are telling you that your reality doesn't matter. They are rewriting the narrative and asking you to accept it without question. Jung taught that the psyche depends on truth for integration. Lies fracture that integration. They create psychic dissonance. The more lies you accept, the more disconnected you become from your own instincts. You start second-guessing yourself, doubting your perception, rationalizing deception. This is not love. This is slow psychic death. Fourth deed, dismissal of your inner world. There is a unique kind of violence in being emotionally dismissed. When someone scoffs at your dreams, belittles your fears, or treats your inner experiences as too sensitive or overreacting, they are minimizing your existence. Jung emphasized the inner world as the true stage of transformation. To mock that world is to assault your very selfhood. A person who consistently invalidates your feelings is not just disagreeing. They are denying your right to be. Over time, this trains you to silence your inner voice, to suppress your instincts, to wear a mask that others find acceptable. But what good is a mask if the soul behind it is suffocating? Fifth deed, repetitive exploitation of your kindness. Kindness is sacred, but kindness without discernment becomes servitude. There are people who seek out the kind, not to reciprocate, but to consume. They test your limits not because they respect your generosity, but because they expect your exhaustion. They take, and when you finally say enough, they call you selfish. Jung warned us of the danger of unconscious enmeshment, when our care for others becomes a strategy to earn love, to feel worthy. You must never tolerate those who see your compassion as weakness, who exploit your empathy as currency. The moment your kindness becomes a tool for their gain and your pain, that is the moment to walk away. Each of these 5 deeds is not always explosive. They are often quiet, subtle, hidden beneath smiles and politeness. That is why they are so dangerous. You endure them not because you are weak, but because you hope that they will change, hope that love can fix everything, hope that being good enough will make them stop. But this is not love. It is trauma repetition. It is self-neglect masked as loyalty. Jung believed that the soul is not just something we possess. It is something we must protect, and protection requires clarity. These actions, disrespect, guilt-tripping, dishonesty, emotional invalidation, and exploitation, are not mere annoyances. They are violations. They create wounds in the psyche that fester silently until we can no longer recognize ourselves in the mirror. You must understand this. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It is about choosing yourself again and again. It is about teaching the world how to treat you by how you treat yourself. It is about no longer tolerating what slowly kills your spirit under the pretense of love, loyalty, or peace. There is a silent contract we often sign without knowing, the belief that enduring pain grants us moral superiority, that the more we tolerate, the more virtuous we become. But Jung would have called this a form of self-deception, a mask of nobility hiding a fear of confrontation, a fear of abandonment, a fear of self-assertion. The soul does not evolve through silent suffering. It evolves through conscious discernment. It thrives not by allowing everything, but by choosing what is sacred and what must be expelled. The deeds you allow into your life become the architecture of your inner world. And some acts, no matter how normalized by society or masked by affection, must never be given space. 6th deed, being made to feel small for your growth. There are people who smile when you shrink and frown when you rise. They were comfortable with you when you doubted yourself, when you apologized for existing, when you needed them to define your worth. But the moment you begin to evolve, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, they grow cold. They mock your changes, question your motives, or suggest you're trying to be better than everyone. Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, will often trigger resistance in those who benefit from your stagnation. Tolerating this resistance, adjusting your brightness to maintain their comfort, is a betrayal of your evolution. You are not responsible for the insecurities others feel in the presence of your transformation. 7th deed, chronic victimhood as a power strategy. Some people refuse to heal because their pain gives them control. They wear their suffering as armor, not to protect their wounds, but to justify manipulation. Every conversation circles back to how others wronged them. Every conflict becomes your fault, and every request you make is met with a recounting of their suffering. Jung warned of the dangers of the unconscious victim, the person who identifies so deeply with their wounds that they cannot exist without them. When you tolerate this long enough, you become their caretaker, their emotional dumping ground, their scapegoat. But empathy must not become a leash. You are not a therapist for those who weaponize their wounds to escape accountability. 8th deed, passive-aggressive sabotage. Some attacks are not loud. They arrive in whispers, sideways glances, forgotten messages, subtle delays. Passive aggression is the language of repressed hostility. Jung would have identified it as a symptom of shadow projection. When someone cannot admit their envy or resentment, they act it out in ways that are deniable, untraceable, corrosive. They support you with words but undermine you with actions. They delay your progress with small omissions. They offer help and then fail to follow through. And when confronted, they retreat into confusion or offense. Why are you being so sensitive? Tolerating this is death by 1,000 cuts. The soul cannot flourish in an atmosphere of veiled hostility. You must name what is hidden, even when it's inconvenient. Ninth deed, forced moral debt. There are those who give not out of love, but as a strategy to own you. They offer favors you didn't ask for, then keep an invisible ledger. They remind you of their generosity in moments when you resist them. They give, but only to ensure you will owe. Jung believed in the sacred reciprocity of authentic relationships, not transactional obligation masquerading as care. When someone ties a moral leash around your neck with every act of kindness, it is not generosity, it is control. Tolerating this dynamic will twist your understanding of love. You will begin to fear receiving, to associate closeness with manipulation. But real connection does not invoice your soul. 10th deed, repeated disregard for your boundaries. There is no clearer act of disrespect than the violation of a clearly stated boundary. Whether it's your time, your space, your energy, or your emotional limits. When someone crosses them again and again, despite knowing better, they are not just being forgetful. They are testing the architecture of your self-respect. Jung understood the symbolic power of boundaries. They are not walls to isolate you. They are doors that determine who enters your sacred space and how. Tolerating repeated boundary violations sends a message that your words are suggestions, not commands, that your soul is open real estate. You teach others how to treat you by what you let slide. The sacred must be defended. Each of these deeds is a quiet erosion of your essence. They do not arrive with grand betrayal. They sneak in under the veil of normalcy, routine, and compromise. That's what makes them so dangerous. Their ability to blend in, to mask themselves as loyalty, humility, empathy, or politeness. But the psyche keeps score. Every time you swallow your discomfort, every time you tell yourself it's not a big deal, every time you rationalize the unacceptable to preserve a relationship, something within you recoils, not in anger, but in sorrow. The soul mourns its own abandonment. Carl Jung didn't teach us to fight others. He taught us to illuminate the darkness within and around us. And sometimes that means looking directly at the faces we love and seeing the shadows they cast. It means choosing solitude over subjugation. It means saying no more, not with hatred, but with clarity. You are not cruel for refusing to suffer. You are not selfish for refusing to be used. You are simply remembering who you are. There is one final deed left, one more violation that cuts deeper than the rest. But perhaps, before we speak of that, you already feel its shape forming in your heart. The one act you tolerated for far too long, the one that mirrored your own hidden fear. 11th deed, self-abandonment to preserve others' comfort. You know this one, not just intellectually, but viscerally. You've lived it in silence. It's the moment you wanted to speak but didn't, not out of kindness, but fear. It's when you smiled while your spirit bled, when you allowed your needs to wither so someone else wouldn't feel discomfort. This is not just about boundaries. It is about identity. Jung spoke often of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. Self-abandonment is the antithesis of that journey. It is the unconscious decision to split yourself, to fracture your soul into acceptable pieces, simply to remain loved, or needed, or safe. This is the deed that disguises itself as loyalty, sacrifice, humility. But at its root is a deep mistrust in the value of your authentic self. You learned somewhere along the way that your truth was too loud, your needs too burdensome, your essence too much. So you dimmed, not once, but again and again, until it became your nature to disappear in the presence of others. This form of self-erasure is not noble. It is a wound. It does not lead to peace. It leads to resentment, burnout, depression. You cannot outrun your own soul forever. It waits. It aches. It whispers in your quietest moments, "Come back to me." To tolerate this deed is to live a life that is technically functional, but spiritually bankrupt. It is to be surrounded by people who love your compliance but fear your truth. And when you finally erupt, because you will, they will call you unstable, selfish, unpredictable. Not because you are, but because you finally stopped tolerating your own burial. Jung warned us, the greatest danger lies not in what others do to us, but in what we allow in the name of harmony. And the deadliest harm is not the betrayal by others, but the betrayal of the self. There is a difference between compromise and collapse, between compassion and self-sacrifice, between peace and appeasement. And to live a life of integrity, you must learn that difference not through theory, but through fire, through saying no when your voice shakes, through walking away even when your heart still longs to stay, through honoring the pain that comes with self-respect over the comfort that comes with self-erasure. You will lose people. That is true. When you stop tolerating what breaks you, some will call you difficult. Some will retreat, some will rage, and it will hurt. But what you gain is immeasurable. You gain yourself, fully, fiercely, finally. This path is not about arrogance. It is about sacred reclamation. It is the remembering of your wholeness. It is the refusal to carry what was never yours to hold. It is the turning toward the mirror, not to ask who you need to be for others, but to ask with courage, who have I always been beneath the layers I wore to survive? Jung's legacy is not merely academic, it is spiritual. It is a call to arms, not against the world, but for your soul. His work invites us to descend into the unconscious, to meet the shadow, to reclaim the exiled parts of ourselves and bring them home. And to do this, you must first clear the path. You must create a life where the sacred has space to breathe. That means refusing to tolerate what silences your truth. Let this not be a list of grievances. Let this be a mirror. What have you endured? Not because you were strong, but because you were afraid to lose love? What have you normalized? Not because it was right, but because it was familiar. What have you silenced? Not because it didn't matter, but because you believed you didn't. The time for tolerating your own erosion has passed. What you allow is what will define you. And if you are to walk the path of true transformation, of depth, of awakening, you must stop betraying yourself in the name of a connection. There are people who will meet you in your wholeness, who will not shrink when you shine, who will not punish your boundaries nor weaponize your wounds, but they will not arrive while your life is filled with those who feast on your silence. You must make room. You must make space for truth. And that begins with a sacred vow. From this moment forward, I will no longer tolerate what asks me to disappear. This is the work of individuation. This is the call of the self, not to become someone new, but to return to the one you were before the world taught you to perform, before you learned that tolerating harm was the price of belonging, before you forgot that your presence is not a problem to solve, but a truth to embody. You were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be whole.